Saint John of the Cross was a mystic, poet, saint, and doctor of the Church. He was born in a small town called Fontiveros in Spain. John's father, Gonzalo de Yepes, who belonged to a wealthy family of silk merchants in Toledo, had married Catalina Alvarez, a weaver of poor and humble background. Shocked and disturbed by what they considered shameful, a marriage to a girl of low position, the merchant family disinherited Gonzalo. Deprived of his financial security, he had to adapt to the drudgery of the poor, which in his case meant the lowly trade of weaving. The couple had 3 sons, Francisco, Luis, and the youngest, Juan, who would be later known as Saint John of the Cross. John was a little more than 2 years old when his father died. His older brother, Luis, died 2 years after that, likely because of malnutrition. Catalina, along with little John, left their home and reached Medina del Campo, the bustling market center of Castile. When she received a job offer in a weaving position, she wasted no time in saying yes. Catalina was described as a devout Christian who brought up her sons with the greatest Christian spirit and encouraged them to be devoted to the Mother of God. John was enrolled in a school for poor children, where he received an elementary education. The school resembled an orphanage where the children received food, clothing, and lodging. John was given a religious education from a young age, and he chose to follow a religious path, even as a child. He served as an acolyte at an Augustinian monastery. In his spare time, he worked in a hospital and developed a great love for the poor and the sick. He sometimes felt that he was in the presence of Jesus when he was tending the patients. At age 17, the bright young lad enrolled at the Jesuit school, where lectures in grammar, rhetoric, Latin, and Greek were the rule. These years of hospital work and study, tasks that called for responsibility and diligence, complemented John's early experiences of poverty. In 1563, at age 21, John entered the Carmelite novitiate, recently founded in Medina. John probably took this decision as he was inspired by the contemplative spirit and its devotion to Mary, the Mother of God. That same year, he received the habit of the order and the religious name John of St. Matthias. He completed further studies at Salamanca and in 1567 was ordained to the priesthood. Shortly after ordination, the young friar returned to Medina del Campo, where he met the great Carmelite reformer, Teresa of Avila. They were years apart in age when they first met. Teresa was beginning the foundation of her second Reformed Carmel at the age of 52. And John was a newly ordained priest who had just turned 25. At the time of their first conversation, John was considering leaving the Carmelite order for a more prayerful and secluded life as a Carthusian monk. And Teresa had begun her reform to establish houses closer to the original spirit of Carmel. Having permission to also erect a reformed priory, she needed a male counterpart to begin the foundation. John was attracted by the strict routine followed by Teresa, a routine she hoped to reintroduce to her order, as well as her devotion to prayer and simplicity. Her followers went barefoot and were therefore known as the Discalced Carmelites. On November 28, 1568, Teresa founded a new monastery. The same day, John changed his name again to John of the Cross. Within a couple years, John and his fellow friars relocated to a larger site for their monastery. He remained at this location until 1572. The reforms of Teresa and John, however, led to tensions among the Spanish Carmelite friars. John and Teresa suffered much for the reform of Carmel. John was abducted from his dwelling in Avila by a group who opposed the reforms. He was made a prisoner in a Carmelite monastery in Toledo, at that time the order's most important monastery in Castile. He was kept under brutal conditions and subjected to routine physical torture. He was kept isolated in a tiny stifling cell measuring 10 feet by 6 feet. He was publicly lashed before the community weekly, fed a very poor diet, and not even given a change of clothes. His physical health suffered greatly. He kept himself open to God's action, for no prison could separate him from God's all-embracing love. During this time, he had many beautiful experiences and encounters with God in prayer. When the time ordained by God came, he escaped and made his way to a monastery of Reformed Carmelite nuns in Toledo. They barely recognized him, for they found him emaciated, confused, and looking barely alive. St. John's experience in imprisonment brought with it a purification of the purest quality. It produced the most beautiful poetry Spain ever had, the spiritual canticle. After escaping, John spent 8 months recuperating and writing Ascent of Mount Carmel, the prose commentaries on his poetry that explained the mystic way. In 1579, he became the rector of a new college, the Colegio de San Basilio, to support the studies of Descalced friars in Andalusia. Continuing the reform even after Teresa's death, he established a monastery of Descalced nuns in Malaga in 1585. The same year, he was elected provincial vicar of Andalusia. During the last few years of his life, John traveled and established new houses across Spain. The work of St. John consists of poetry and the mystical commentaries that he wrote on some of his poems. Best known are the Spiritual Canticle, the Living Flame of Love, the Dark Night of the Soul, and Ascent of Mount Carmel. The last 2 works comment on the same poem. When he became ill, he chose to go to the city of Ubeda, where no one knew him. He died in Ubeda on December 14th, 1591. Even though John died long ago in 1591, his spiritual writings and poetry are still read today by people who want to grow in their relationship with the Lord. One of John's most famous sayings is, "In the evening of life, we will be judged on love alone." He was canonized in 1726 and was declared a Doctor of the Church in 1926. Oh, blessed Jesus, grant me stillness of soul in Thee. Let Thy mighty calmness reign in me. Rule me, O Thou King of gentleness, King of peace. Give me control over my words, thoughts, and actions, from all irritability, want of meekness, want of gentleness. O dear Lord, deliver me. By Thine own deep patience, give me patience